Welcome to Configuring ISATAP. Now this is going to be part one of a two-part video. And in part one, I want to talk to you about ISATAP, what it is, what it does, when we would use it, because it is an IP version 6 transition technology. Now Microsoft mentions configuring ISATAP explicitly in their objectives for this certification exam, so I want to cover that here. So in part one, let's talk just a little bit about what it is, why you would use it. That'll probably get you through most questions on the exam. Then in part two, I'll talk with you step by step through how we set up an ISATAP server so that you can see how that's done and you can understand that and get through the exam on that end. So first of all, what exactly is ISATAP? Well, the name really tells you a lot about it. Intra-site Automatic Tunnel Addressing Protocol. Now this is, I've already mentioned, an IP version 6 transition technology. This is designed to help us move IP version 6 traffic across an IP version 4 network that doesn't really support IP version 6. Now what it's going to do is it's going to use tunneling. The IP version 6 packets are going to be encapsulated within an IP version 4 header. And so the router thinks that it's looking at IP version 4 and goes across the IP4 network. Then when it gets to the other end, it's broken out and there's your IP version 6. Now ISATAP is used, make sure you get this one. ISATAP is used within a site or within an intranet. ISATAP is not used for communications on the public internet. Now if you can get that one aspect of it down, you can probably pick your way through most questions or concerns, both on the exam and the real world, about ISATAP. This is only designed for private, sites, intranets, those sort of things. You don't use ISATAP on the public internet. Now, if this whole concept of ISATAP is new to you, go out and do a little outside reading on IP version 6 and read about ISATAP. Now, let me tell you one thing before I go on. ISATAP can be confusing out there because of some of the changes with direct access and some things in Windows Server 2012. There's a debate about, do I even need ISATAP when I'm running 2012? Some people say yes, some people say no. So don't get caught up in all that. Just know what ISATAP is, know what it does, know when you would use it. That's as far as you need to go. Once you get into a real world implementation, you'll figure out really quickly whether you need to use ISATAP. Now, why would we use this? Well, as IP version 6 usage expands, and it will, even if it's not in your network right now and you're not using it, it's eventually going to happen. And once you start converting to IP version 6, you're going to have parts of your network that will convert completely first. And so you're going to have some IP version 6 only subnets on your network, and then you're going to have some IP version 4 subnets. Well, ISATAP will allow hosts on those IP version 4 only networks to communicate with hosts on the IP version 6 only network. So how do we configure this and make it happen? Well, here's the good news. On the client side, you don't have to do anything. It's already a function that's working by default. On the server side, you're going to have to do some configuration. You're going to have to tell your Windows server to function as an ISATAP router and then advertise itself on the network so that the traffic can figure out where to go, what to do. The clients know where to send their IP version 6 traffic and those sorts of things. Now, when you configure ISATAP, also watch for this, especially on the exam. It is command line only. There's no graphical user interface. Now, there is a little twist to that, and that is when we set up some of Microsoft's remote access functionalities, in certain situations, it will set up an ISATAP router for you. And technically, I guess that's a GUI because it's coming through the server manager. But for the purposes of the exam, it's command line only. Now, there are 5 steps involved with configuring your Windows Server 2012 box to be an ISATAP router. The first thing, we have to configure the server to advertise itself as an ISATAP router. Then we need to provide the ISATAP prefix to hosts. Then we're going to configure the ISATAP router to forward packets with that prefix to the IP version 6 network that they're trying to reach. Then we will actually enable routing on the ISATAP adapter. Keep in mind, we're going to have a NIC card in our computer. It will automatically have an ISATAP tunneling protocol section on it. You may even see some IP version 6 addresses that are generated. So that'll be out there. We just need to enable routing on that adapter for ISATAP. And then last but not least, we'll actually provide the IP version 6 routes that will be advertised to hosts. So when they're looking for things, they'll contact our router because it's been advertising, and then they'll see the host that they need, and everybody gets matched up just like before. So this is not the simplest thing, and especially if it's a whole new concept to you, you'll just have to do it a couple of times. So come back and join me in part 2, and I'll show you the commands that you will use in these 5 steps to configure Windows Server 2012 as an ISATAP router, and that's about as deep as they're going to go on the exam with you. So come join me in part 2, and let's look at these 5 steps a little bit closer.